Welcome to the Arts to Hearts podcast, a show for artists, creators, creative entrepreneurs to have heartfelt conversations about living a creative life and a career. As you go into this show, hear your favorite creators talk about money, mindset, business, creativity, and everything else that goes behind into making a life that we all adore as an artist. Hear the messy and the wonderful side of being a creative. I am your host, Charika Arora, an artist, creator, and founder of Arts to Hearts project. Thank you for joining me here. Let's jump right in. Hey, you guys, welcome back to the Arts to Hearts podcast season 2. This is your host, Charika Arora. I'm back with another amazing guest today, and this time I am so excited and also a little scared because I just told her that we both of us speak a very different language. But before I introduce you to her, I just wanted to read out something that I've been researching about her. So I have an amazing illustrator, fashion designer, um, and a creative more than anything else, who has been doing a lot of rounds of appreciation here in India. So I pulled out a few quotes from her features, and there is something that really clicked. Okay, so from renaming fashion brands for the Desi 20 something to giving us the most iconic design, Srishti is a perfect amalgamation of aesthetics and intellect. Srishti has collaborated with some big names like MAC Cosmetics, Fast Track, Levi's to create some very interesting artworks that not only will make you laugh but also share a strong social message like this is by IDEVA. Something I really found interesting was wait, we love Srishti's understanding of what we all do all day, every day. If you're someone who's perpetually broke, she's got a meme for you. If you're dealing with the trauma of growing older, she's got a hilarious one for you too. The reason it all works in primarily because of her maximalist approach to art. The memes that she produces are not in conventional format. There are no LOL lol worthy images, but carefully curated artworks that have been created from scratch. I am so excited to introduce Srishti to you. Welcome to the podcast, Srishti.
Hi, it's so good to be like quoted back like this. I feel like super special. I'm like, which quote is she going to say?
I haven't done this
Okay.
before, honestly, and we'll still edit this wherever, like intro. I mean, I've never introduced a guest like this before, but while I was researching you, I really love this article by IDEVA on you, and it was so intriguing and so well put together. And I felt like how, like you are this humor queen of
Like,
India.
yes, I feel like that's too much pressure. I'm not that funny otherwise, but sometimes I'm good. I think I'm funny when I have time to like put it down in like text format. Like I'm not like
Is it?
conversationally super funny. I don't think I'm conversationally as funny as my friends.
Really? We'll figure this out. I mean, we'll get to
Yeah.
know this in the conversation because when I was just getting ready for this conversation, I was so intimidated because I am the least funny person you can ever meet. I just told you that even before
Yeah,
recording.
yeah.
And I was like, how am I going to even match the level? Because I just can't. I mean, any episode that you've heard so, I mean, if you've heard so far, we always have like I bring this vibe of very serious conversations or like stuff like that, and I was like I'm having this person who has like such good humor, and I was like, how am I going to even cope up with that?
No, no, it's not going to be that. It'll be mildly disappointing for sure. I ain't going to be
Oh,
that funny or funny
so
at
I
all.
should get
But
comfortable.
yeah, get comfortable. Like, that's more reserved for like writing. Like I'm a writer, funny, like funny writer, but not
Oh
a
wow,
yeah, not the
this is
most conversational, organic funny. Like I try to be sometimes a okayish, but most of the time it's a little like crickets. You can hear crickets.
oh wow, this is so rare for me to even hear because we all like, at least I had this in mind because you have this image, like of course we all have curated images by our work,
Correct. Yeah.
what we do, and always had this perception until of course we met today, and I as we're speaking that you will be this person, but it also like how differently creative processes work for everyone.
Sure.
Like some
Yeah.
people, but before we dig into all of that, would you like to just introduce yourself and what you do to everyone who's listening to this episode?
Sure. So I'm Srishti Gupta Roy. I'm a 30-year-old illustrator, fashion designer, and visual artist. I'm currently living in Bangalore in India. I grew up in Kolkata, then I studied for a bit in Delhi, and now I'm in Bangalore. So I'm kind of a little bit of every part of India, I feel. Uh, my art style is super maximal and colorful, and there is like a almost like an inherent India inspiration that is there in a lot of motifs and illustrations that I do. So I've been trained formally as a fashion designer, and I worked in like the corporate retail sector for almost like 4 5 years, and then after that I ventured into like full fledged freelance designing now, and that journey has been about like 3 years long. So let's see, like till now I've had the opportunity and the good luck to work with a lot of really like interesting clients and big brands, and hoping that that journey continues for me. Everything is kind of like all out there and all over the place.
Oh my goodness, now that you've brought this up, and again, so strange to hear this from you because, again, what I even if I pull out my questions right now, I can't show you, but let me just tell you because
Sure.
we all see the other side of it. Because when I'm seeing you as a viewer, and I feel like, oh, she's got it all together. Like
Hmm.
you have the clients that all everyone has on their dream list, like from
Yeah.
Netflix, Adidas, Adobe, or like I mean, let me just even pull that out. I also mean I put together your client list, which includes Google, Vogue, Levi's, MAC Cosmetics, Asian Paints, Adobe, Netflix, Lay's, and all of these. And these are of only a selected one. Like these are not all
Rishu,
your
I
clients.
understand where you're coming from, because the thing is with a lot of these projects, I feel like it happens so organically because people happen to see my work on Instagram. So it's not like I had reached out to any of
Yeah,
these people per se. But I also understand that, while this is like, I don't know, like sometimes like I feel like with freelance work, it's so there's no structure to it at the end of the day, right? So while there are
yeah,
those clients that you see, but you don't know the thing, you don't know how many months I've not had work also. So when you see that
yeah, yeah,
carefully, like
absolutely.
curated, like highlight reel almost on Instagram, it feels
Yeah,
like everything is super sorted. But there have been
right.
months when I've been without work, and then maybe there's some things that I've done which didn't never even came out, or like some people had huge arguments with not these clients per se, but just
Yeah,
in general, it's just the show reel of the best things. But yeah, but these
absolutely.
but it has been great. Like there's no doubt about that, and I will forever be grateful and indebted that I have been given these opportunities to work with these people, because it's truly like something to add in your portfolio forever.
Absolutely. And you've done such stunning work. I think I mean, I discovered your work, I mean, maybe 2 3 years ago. I don't even know. I mean, I don't even remember now because I've been seeing it for so long. And you've had this
Sure.
very distinct style that, every time I see some, I remember you hadn't announced your recent project with India Circus, I think, Krishna Mehta's book. And I
No,
remember
Manish
seeing,
Arora. Sorry, that was
oh,
Manish
sorry.
Arora's book.
Oh
Yeah,
yes, Manish. Sorry, my
yeah,
bad. Yeah, and I
correct,
saw he made a post before you did, and I
correct.
saw the
Yes,
cover,
yes.
and I was like, this is her work for sure. I mean, there's if anyone who follows you or knows your work would recognize your work in an instant, and I
Yeah,
was
and
like, this
honestly,
is
that is so validating. Like, this is the biggest validation when you want to have like a very distinct style, because there is so much of visual arts that's there on Instagram. The fact that somebody can remember, though, this looks like hers is pretty, like, it is
Yeah,
gratifying.
I mean, this is something a lot of creatives always are aspiring and striving for because we all want to be known for something, and we all
Yeah.
have our own brand specific. And I think it's not only the visual vocab of your work, but also the vocal, or I would say the written, the content
Mm.
basically,
Sure.
which I think makes it even more powerful. I was just while I was researching and just going over your work, and I was just seeing how the transition of your work, where the humor content wasn't such a big
Mm.
part of your work, but your work
Sure.
still looked similar. And then I
Mm,
could see
yeah.
there was like a gradual touch, and then you went like all in, and it felt like you felt so much safer in using that side of your creativity in your work. And I think that was the work that actually brought so much of recognition for you,
Yeah.
if I'm not wrong. What
No,
do you
you're
have to
not
say about
wrong. Yeah.
that?
No, I absolutely agree to it, because earlier, like when I was in college, also, so illustration was like a module which I thoroughly enjoyed. So I really like, even in college, like I was somebody who really enjoyed fashion illustration. And the interesting thing about fashion illustration when you're doing it in college is that, again, the possibilities are endless, because you sort of
Endless.
just have to have a human head, and then everything else is like up to you. You might have bodies without heads also, for all you know. So I always found that fun. But then when I started working in my corporate job, I didn't really do it full fledged. Here and there I would. So when
Yeah.
I never even had a vague idea that this could be combined with text. So that was not even a thought process. So when everybody told me to start the illustration page, because earlier I used to put up these illustrations on my personal page, and I always used to
Okay.
say, people are not liking it enough, and it's not a big,
I
I'm
know.
not getting the traction that I want. And then everybody advised make a separate page for this, because a lot of people are interested in design and visuals, might not want to
Yeah.
see like 200 selfies from you like in
Yeah.
some holiday, because it's such a very
Yeah.
confusing space. So then I made the page, and like you said, the first few illustrations that I put out, I had that style somewhat. It wasn't like evolved to what it is today, but it had like the, you could understand the beginnings of it were there. But the concept of adding text was still not there. And what happened one day when I was like going through my phone screenshot album, I just realized that I only had screenshots of memes and had only screenshots of fashion runway images for work. And then I was like, it'd be so cool if this could be combined. And then I started realizing, okay, I can be funny, like it can be witty, because most of fashion is so funny. And since
Yeah.
that clicked and people somehow found like some novelty in it, because this was happening in 2018 also, when not too many
Yeah.
people, I don't think, had added like text in like
Right. Right.
illustration.
I think that
So
was the time lettering was also coming very much in fashion,
correct.
especially in India.
Yeah, exactly, especially in the context of India. So this was
Yeah.
in my headspace, like almost like the nuance of like fashion illustration and combining it with something super lowbrow like memes, which is not exactly about. And this is 2018 at the beginning. So then when that's kind of clicked, I almost felt like it was something that became easy for me, because I also think like a copywriter somehow. Like sometimes like the idea
Yeah.
that comes to my mind is like a one line funny thing, and then I create the illustration
Oh
around it.
wow.
So yeah.
That's
So
so nice to hear.
so for me, it felt like, oh, then it makes sense if I include the text, because maybe it's a crutch that I'm falling back on, because I don't know, like it's funny. And sometimes when I get client projects that don't want any text, I feel like, oh shit, but that was like my thing is like it has to be like a little funny. But it happened organically, and I've kind of stuck to it to a certain extent, at least on my personal page, that I do like to retain that element of humor and like a pun or like something funny.
But is that who you are when you're like, is that innately also who you are? I mean,
No,
um,
that is who I am. Like, it's not like I can't put that on just for Instagram. I am that
yeah,
person anyway. I am like I love having conversations with people and like sort of picking up these really innately funny things that they've said,
yeah.
and then like sort of making like a list of it. And then I personally enjoy like when somebody gets a kick out of it and goes like it's such a relatable piece of art
Oh,
for
you
me.
do that so well.
Yeah, so people love it, and I like the reaction that it gets also. So it is innately me also, and it just somehow like because it was getting like certain amount of traction also, I also kind of
Yeah,
did stick to it to
do
a certain
do with it.
extent. Yeah. Yeah.
Amazing. And that's something so true because even when you'll randomly share stuff on your stories and you'll write copy.
Yeah.
And I so agree to this because I've been in this phase of branding and working and
Yeah.
like you are such a good copywriter and that would come to my mind so many times because the kind of copy you always come up so instantly. I mean, people can't like we all can't put together like a facade that we can put with our grids, let's say. You can schedule and all of those things, but
Yeah.
stories are like a real insight into who
Correct.
you
It's
are.
like, yeah, even I feel I love stories because it's so irreverent. It stays only for 24 hours.
Yeah.
It's just the most fun thing for me. I love story. Like I'm
You
not a reel
something in your
person.
mind and you go
Yeah.
you go there.
Correct.
And
Exactly.
even then when you put out something and you add like your comment or like a copy and I'm like, how did she come up with this now? Like this something which seems very obvious to you does not
Probably.
seem that easy and obvious to someone else, especially like I'm on the receiving end and whenever I look at and uh, whenever see your work now as a consumer I'm also seeing like, oh, she must have had something like, because that's also something that's become very recognizable for your own brand, your
Yeah.
visual style, but also the content that now I'm like, okay, what is she going to hit upon, like what
Yeah.
is something that you're going to say. And what's even more interesting is that a lot of your humor is just not humor, it's also hitting on a social nerve of the society that we're living in, especially like Indian millennial, urban contemporaries, most of us. Like, what do you
Yeah.
have to say about that?
Yeah, I mean, like most of like humor and relatability does come from like a place where you have to authentically have lived that life or like had
Yeah.
those experiences to translate. And for me, like me being the kind of person, even if I have to discuss something serious, I'll put it in the garb of like sarcasm and satire and wit, as opposed to like making an illustration, trying to like do it in more like a protesty probably style, which is like, oh, this is the problem with society, this is what I can do. I personally, I don't gravitate towards that as a person and as an illustrator, as a creative person, as a creative.
Yeah.
So for me, like I feel like a lot of the like, I don't think, I personally am not one of those people who touches on super um how would I say, like maybe like touchy topics. Maybe like I
Yeah.
would not make a post about like something to do with, say, a caste problem or a caste
Yeah.
issue that's happening, because I don't feel I have lived that life to
I,
have any comment
yeah.
on it. And so
Yeah.
I think that maybe my version of like what my issues, first world problem issues are, I would rather stick on that lane because I have lived that experience authentically. And I can put a fun twist to it. But like for instance, if you see an artwork and I'm talking about, oh fuck, like no, none of us have had any savings, it is kind of
Yeah.
hitting on the nerve that we're at that point where expenses are so high and the idea of putting up a facade is so high that none of us could manage to save money. So there is
Yeah.
like a undercurrent to it, but it will never be like, oh, like it's like a very social message. Like on, if you look at it like
Yeah.
in the first approach, I
Yeah.
do try
Yeah.
to, yeah,
Absolutely.
yeah, but I
Yeah.
am,
That's true.
yeah, with social
So
messages, I feel like some of them, like it, for me, like I feel like it is more organic if it is guised in like some amount of humor and sarcasm.
that's true. I think, and I think it's also a way to say something or that also reaches to masses. I think your work um, so many things. I can't even pull out like one right now, but there's so many things, especially women related, because as you
Yeah,
spoke, like, we that's the most intimate thing that we experience as women creative or like a millennial. And a lot of times you put perspective in from, like, with the tool of humor to problems that we face a lot of times. I have a very interesting question. I want to hear what you say about it.
sure,
A lot of guests on the podcast have come. All of them have been women. All of them have come from across the world. This is very common question and inhibition and experience people have shared,
sure.
um, which is a lot of people who came from the art school or the design school and had humorous side to them. At least I
Hmm.
didn't. I never experienced this because I never had humor on me. So thank
You
God.
need to stop iterating that this is not a good. You are,
Believe me, people pull my leg when, people pull leg because you make jokes. People pull my
yeah.
leg because I never make jokes. That's how real it is. So, a lot of times people share their experience that how they wanted to use humor in their careers, in the arts,
Okay.
illustration, fine arts, but they were always demotivated and sidetracked by their, let's say, schools, mentors, jobs, or whatever, because they
Okay.
always felt like never the fear of never being taken seriously.
Okay. Okay.
Has that been something that you have ever experienced or felt in your own way?
No, I personally haven't ever like had. I've never gone through an experience. Actually never even thought about it this way until I was asked this question. That,
Really?
yeah, like I don't know. Like I feel like we're living in an era where like even if there's like an earth-shattering pandemic outside, the meme makers are busier than like anybody else making jokes about
That's
new
true.
variants. Like I feel like generationally, at least millennials, and
Yeah,
we're not young anymore, so millennials are like
yeah,
30 plus.
yeah,
I feel like we grew up in a ecosystem where humor was super accepted and easy, and almost like
yeah.
the funnier you are, the more socially acceptable you are.
Oh, of
So
course.
yeah, so I personally never felt like I um, had any kind of baggage about like being funny on the internet or being funny in my artwork. Maybe a generation before me might have had a different experience
Yeah,
because they might have had a different reality that they grew up in. But like
yeah,
the reality that we grew up in, I feel like it's the most organic thing that a lot of people like use for. I mean, like we're living in an era where presidents are dancing on TikTok songs to like put out a message. So like clearly there are no rules anymore in terms of what you need to do to be taken seriously or not. So I never
I love
had that
this.
pressure externally, and I never put that pressure on myself either, because it is a very important facet of my personality with or without the internet. So and
Oh
so
my God.
automatically it is that comes across as my internet persona also.
Love that. Love that. I think it's also because your work primarily has been into a lot of tech space and the illustration space. Whereas, I think even in India, this space is way more open, way more I think it gives you way more creative liberation than
Yeah.
typical traditional
Crafts,
art
probably like
skills.
art and
Yeah.
craft. Yeah, I understand.
Yeah.
Like it is a totally different space, so the rules of interaction are totally
Yeah.
different. Yeah.
And you know what's even interesting with your work is what I feel is it's such a good, like your work is such a good fit that bridges the gap between the two. Like your work is, and especially with the background that you come with in fashion, textile, you you are also in the digital space, but your work also fits into the, let's say, the other side of the spectrum.
Hmm.
Have you, like, when you were venturing into, were you clear, like, you wanted to be an illustrator? Let's also talk about your journey as a fashion designer, how you
Sure.
went into illustration, like how did that happen?
Yeah, sure. So I actually I've been learning fine arts since I was really young. So I come from
Finance.
like fine arts. No, no, not
As a
finance.
finance. Unless
I
finance,
don't.
I would be blown away by now.
I would be shocked myself if I said I've been learning finance since I was a child, and then if I juxtapose that with my bank account statement, what finance is. No, no, no. So I would say I've been learning fine art. So I mean, I come from like a fairly, I won't say traditional, but like a very typical Bengali middle class family where,
Yeah.
like, when you're younger, then it is kind of like you have to learn like two, three fine arts. Okay,
Yeah, yeah,
so
yeah.
whether it's classical music, Rabindra Sangeet, whether it's dance, whether it's fine, like proper hardcore drawing. So my mom put me in all these classes, and drawing is
Oh, wow.
something that kind of stuck. So I did that. So I did that from, she put me in the class when I was 4 years old. I was in that drawing class till I was about
Goodness.
9 or 10. And I loved it. So she never took, it was never like a task. I mean, I would love
Sure.
to go like with other kids, like do crafts and like draw. And there are a lot of these art schools for like kids in like my
Okay.
neighborhood area and stuff. So I used to do that. Then I had like a finance teacher who would come home and teach us till I was in about class 7 or 8. Then I did commercial art in school. So it has always been like a big
Oh, you
part of
did?
my life growing up. Yeah. So
Oh,
commercial art
wow.
I did in class 9 and 10. So and then 11, 12 I kind of diverted a bit in like was doing science. But I feel
Oh,
like I
goodness.
yeah, which is great. I mean, I don't regret taking up science at all because it opened up my mind to something else which I
Yeah.
wouldn't have otherwise. So
Yeah.
good for that. So I've been associated with some form of like art and designing, and that time it was not like a there was never a conversation about taking it as a profession. But then
I get
once it came to like 11, 12, that time while I was like sitting for engineering exams also, I told my mom that I'm going to be sitting for a couple of design college exams also because I don't feel like I've completely ended my love affair with drawing, and she was fairly okay about it. So that's when I got into NIFT, and till then also fashion design was not this. I want to do something more related to product design or something more to do with animation, not apparel. But somehow NID did not end up happening, so I went to NIFT. And and the moment you get into NIFT, I think the most the conversation you have with people who've been to the college or know about the college is that their fashion design program is the best. If you've gotten a chance,
best.
then you
Yeah.
must do that program as opposed to anything else.
Yeah.
So that's when I got into again like fashion design, where it's not like I didn't enjoy apparel and clothes, but I never thought that I'll
Yeah.
be doing this professionally. And then I went into like NIFT, and I feel like that's when my mind opened to a different extent because I was in Kolkata before this, and then I went to a place which is as cosmopolitan as Delhi, where your class
Right.
has people from like 25 different states, and states you didn't know a single person from that state for like 18 years, and then you have five friends. So it was great, and that's the advantage of being in. I feel like uh, government college with like people from all over the country. So, and it was Delhi, and it was freedom, and you were 18 years old, and you were living away from your family in your own apartment. It was just like that's when I think I opened up and like bloomed as like a person in terms of like what I like, what I don't like, what is my design sensibility, what are the kind of things that I'm interested in. And that's when I truly fell in love with fashion actually, because I felt like the kick of like, because illustration still then was like, okay, it's just on paper or just on the computer, but the kick of making something that somebody actually wears, and like
Yeah.
other people are like kind of like validating, they're like, oh my god, what a lovely outfit, felt like this, like almost like a high that, oh, like damn, like this is like
Right.
way better than just like an illustration, because it's coming to the 3D form where somebody's wearing it,
Yeah.
somebody's actually engaging with it, like wearing it out to like an event where other people see it, where they interact. So it was like a different dimension to the creativity. But again, like the thing with, I feel like a lot of like, especially design colleges, is that until you have a lot of capital, you can't start your own brand. So you
Yeah.
automatically end up working for either another designer or getting into the corporate retail sector. And
Right.
once you get into that sector, whatever these 4 years of this La La Land that you've been living in kind of come
That
shattering
did.
down. But you
That
realize,
happened to
oh
me.
yeah, exactly. Where you realize, oh wait, like I'm like a very creative individual where I'm
Yeah.
taking 17 hours to like stitch one panel of an outfit, and it is like based on my dreams and this and that, like all sorts of these faffy concepts. But when you're in the corporate sector, it'll be like 799 t-shirt, you have to make 20 of them, and these are the
Yeah.
colors and the prints, go make. So
You,
that was
this is your experience, and for me, it was just I did fashion, and
hmm,
you did it initially. So I have a education like a roller coaster. So I did
okay,
history honors,
okay,
advertising, marketing, and then I came
okay,
into fashion. That was something I always wanted. Like again,
okay,
I
okay,
grew up in a small town in Agra, and I was
okay,
highly like I would see my mom, and my mom was like a big fashion addict. She would always like we
okay,
would always
okay.
um, like we would go through the alleys and like pick up
Or
thrift
pick out fabric
clothes.
and then make
Yeah,
your own
and he would
clothes.
like
Yeah, okay,
this uncle would come in and like he would be the tailor, and then we would piece things together like
yeah,
this will
yeah,
go
yeah,
here.
yeah.
This was like
Correct.
this has even been today. This is something that's
Huh.
how even I function. That's fundamentally something I learned from her. So I always
Okay,
thought I wanted to do this, and since I came from a very small town, I never had the exposure.
sure.
Like my father used to still when I told him I wanted to do this, he would even till today he would call me like Master G, tailor me.
Ah,
Uh,
correct. Yeah,
because that's how their perception was, and I come
sure.
from a business class family, so they never knew like this concept. Like they only knew कि if you're doing fashion, that means कि यार you'll open like a
Like a
um
boutique or like a brand and
yeah
event. Yeah, yeah, sure.
yeah, a boutique, like this is what you're going to. And he
Yeah,
was like a little design schools are not cheap. So he was like, what he's going to pay for versus what he's going to get out of it,
yeah.
I'm never going to match that level. So when I came out of, but I was going into it for my postgrads. I was doing
Okay,
things on the side,
okay.
but I really wanted to go into like a degree. And when I went
Mm-hmm.
into it, I was really happy because
Hmm.
as much as we learned like sewing and all of that, we still had this creative part of drawing, and I always loved
Sure.
like putting things together,
Yeah,
conceptualizing. So I
yeah,
felt like, okay, when I'm going to go into the real world, this is what I'm going to do. My job as a
yeah,
fashion designer would be, well, I'll create like these
yeah. You'll have
gowns and these
concepts and
outfits.
ideas, yeah, and you'll put
Yes,
these
and
like
I'll create
lovely
like
things
a
together.
collection.
Yeah.
100. And when I came, so I started working with Nikasha. No,
Hmm.
the first internship that I did was with Future Groups. So we
Okay.
worked
Oh
on a
wow, that
project.
must have crushed your dreams quite fast.
Yes, absolutely yes. But it
Yeah.
wasn't as hard as when working with like a
Or designer.
yeah. It was so hard because
Hmm.
there is nothing called fashion designer. There's a
I totally
there's
agree.
only
I do agree. Continue with your thought. Yeah, sorry.
there's only something called in any name that you participate, you're always a production manager.
Sure, I
So
totally know what you mean.
you are always so I would even though I was in the brand section, that's
Hmm.
how my love affair with like brand started. But I was always someone I was like, you maybe I want to like design, like ask me like at least ask me
Yeah,
to research in something, and they would be like, no, make these sheets, do that and all of that. And I was like, then I figured, okay, maybe when I'll start my own work, that's
yeah.
how it's going to be. So I took
Hmm.
that plunge. And I was like, this is how it's going to be. Now I will be like this, who'll be like this creator, like this designer who's making these
Yeah.
sketches and
That can
conceptualizing.
only happen if you invest your own money and start your own brand. To be very
That's
honest,
what I
like that.
did.
Yeah,
No, it
yeah.
doesn't happen even then.
Oh,
I'll tell you what
okay.
happened with me. So I did that. And I had handful of savings, and I was like, now I'm going to do this.
Sure.
And I always had this entrepreneurial spirit in me because that's how I
Okay.
grew up.
Mm-hmm.
So, and I had done a couple of things before, and I was a part, like I was in the startup world. So I was like, why not? Why not? I mean, this is
Okay.
my time. I can.
Mm.
And because again, this whole idea of, oh, you're the designer, you're the creator, you're going to do like,
Yeah.
this land that we're always in. So I did
Yeah.
that. The first, let's say 6 months were very good.
Mm-hmm.
Honestly, that's my
Mm-hmm.
real experience because I was creating. I was so invested into creating like a
Mm-hmm.
collection,
Yeah.
like putting together a brand and all of that. Then came the reality that hit me so hard because what I wanted to do as a designer, because I was coming from a place of creative, I would create what
Mm.
felt right to me. But then
Sure.
came like, what will sell? Are people
Hmm.
interested? What price point? Why do you need to make these? Like, I was like, I'm going to make these cute, or like these high-end clothes with double
Hmm.
line and like, French seams and like everything that takes
Hmm.
three times a normal outfit could take. And
Oh,
I did that,
yeah.
and I was like, what? It came to my mind that then things like, you have to take care. Then this whole cycle spiral started of not making something that you wanted to
You
make.
wanted
And
to sort of cater to the audience more than
yeah.
anything else. Yeah.
And I struggled hard with it. And I realized like I can't. I mean, for me, when I thought I would start a brand, it meant I would create it respectively. I didn't even have this real check that I would have to create. Nor did I have the money to sit back and just create and then not be worried ki acha.
How much is coming back into the
Yeah.
business?
But
Yeah.
I was on the edge. I was like, I've put in all my savings. I need to
Yeah.
make sure that this is working. But as I was moving forward, I was realizing how wrong I was going because this wasn't
Hmm.
the path I thought, but I only figured when I went into it.
I
So
totally,
that
I
was my
absolutely understand where you're coming from. I think that's the advantage that I felt because when you work in a corporate, while a lot of it is super like repetitive work, I personally feel like it taught me so much about target customer pricing, how like clothes are made in actual factories, where you can cut costs, how fits work, what the sizing, what kind of sizing is required in what kind of thing. I felt like it was like a boot camp for 7 years, where right now, and I was, and you are forever indebted because now I know if I ever get into apparel and start selling, I have so much clarity in terms of the brand aspect of it. And I know that you cannot make clothes just because of to satiate your creativity. There is a lot of other things involved which you might not know. So for that,
right.
I'm forever indebted. So like, I mean, and I met like freaking amazing people in these corporates, like all the people who are the creative directors of companies like this, because they
Yeah.
were also one at some point 21-year-olds who wanted to come and change the company. So they did understand where we were all coming from. So thank God for that journey because I made like amazing friends. And in life you need like few people who can be your mentors
Yeah.
and guides. And
Yeah.
like met so many people in those phases in that when I was in Bangalore working in like, so I worked for a bit in Madura, then I worked in Agio, then I worked in Mintra. So in all these corporate companies, and thank God that happened. And that's when like in 2018 at the beginning I started the Instagram page just out of a whim basically for illustrating. And slowly people started picking up the work and I started getting freelance offers. And I think that's in about 2019 is when in the middle of it is when I realized okay, now I think I can transition and leave this because my projects are getting a bit more lucrative and I'm at that point where I have enough savings to sort of sustain
Yeah.
myself.
Make
And
sure. Give me
yeah,
one moment. I have some noise. Let me just shut the door.
sure, sure, sure.
I have three dogs and I have to just one keeps coming in and one keeps going out.
Initially, I thought the blanket was wrapped, just wrapped, and that's why. And I saw it moving, and I was like, okay,
No. So you can't see, you can only see one, but there are three.
oh, okay, good.
Okay, amazing. That's the perspective for me. The most life changing decision, or and I really so for me like I don't know how old I was. Maybe 22, 22,
When you started
23.
your brand,
No, when I was interning, like then I started
huh,
working with designers, and so I didn't work. I never wanted to work for some reason with a corporate.
with the corporate,
And
yeah, sure.
I always wanted to have this designer because this was again the dream that I was like I
I
perceived
worked
in
with
my
a
own
designer also in the middle, the India's biggest
really.
designer. Yeah, we
And
all
how was
know.
your experience with that?
He put me off the idea of working with a designer ever in my life. Like I lasted 3 months, and that also I think was 3 months too long. I should have lasted 2 days and walked out. It was the most toxic, horrific work environment because I also had the same thought. Okay, maybe the problem is like I should not be working with a
Yeah,
corporate. Maybe if I work with a standalone independent designer, I'll be more creatively fulfilled and see the process
yeah,
there. But
absolutely.
and mind you, it was not like it was India. Like I mean, I'm not using his name because I don't want to.
Yeah,
Just I want to
absolutely.
use it, but everybody knows who he is. Like India's biggest designer, everybody in the world evidently knows his name. And this was the reality in his
I heard that
workspace
a lot
where,
of times.
yeah, so where people
And
have had the most
go ahead.
horrific experience. Yeah, where people are having the most horrific experience. Every second designer is crying, and sometimes no, bro.
Yeah, and I think I had like this experience. So I switched a little bit here and there when I worked. I worked for a couple of years in the beginning.
So it's so hard that I don't even want to, like, I have stopped adding those experiences on my CV. Like
Yeah,
I felt
I
like
totally
I'd
see.
rather not,
It's so
I'd
true.
rather
When I
not
did
have
this, I
that.
was like, I'm never going to put this anywhere. Like, for me,
Yeah.
this was like a repressed memory. I was like, oh yeah, I did do this. I'm like, I shifted cities to go and do this, and I'm like,
Oh God.
anyway. So yeah, at least I got an exit and came out and got another job. Life would have been very
Yeah.
different if I continued working there.
And it's this is so, like, and then, okay, for me, I figured, like, okay, maybe this isn't the structure that works for me.
Yeah,
I remember I got a job with India. So a lot of people who are listening are not based in India, so I'm just going to put in context, like, Shahi Exports, which is
sure.
in
Yeah.
here. So I went there and I was like, I got the job and I was like, this whole idea of sitting there never fit in right with me. So I felt like, okay, maybe I came in with this startup background and I was always then maybe doing that was it. So
Mm-hmm.
I even worked there. So I worked with someone, again, no names, but I worked there. I survived there for 1.5 year, and I was like
It's not bad.
solely,
Yeah.
like, it was very tiny team, very
Mm-hmm.
tiny. She was like, she came from Harvard, and I was like, maybe this is it. This is my chance to do
Mm-hmm.
something. Then just one very specific thing, and I figured, like, um that was my starting point when realizing that I, for one, didn't always enjoy um, coming from a perspective of making something that people wanted versus I wanted to make something that I wanted to make.
Mm-hmm.
What's strange is what I've been noticing, and again, I wasn't as exposed as I am today, so my perceptions,
Sure.
of course, have shifted.
Keep shifting.
Now,
Yeah.
what has been interesting is I so the community that I have now, I see this has become such a lucrative way for people, especially artists, especially in the fine arts, because
Mm-hmm.
we all have scanty revenue streams, high months and low months, and that is the part and parcel of the jobs that we have.
Yeah.
Like, that is
Yeah.
what being independent makes purely.
Yeah.
But of course, you're getting all finer and better, and, like, I read this somewhere, which was successful creative people at least have seven income streams. So just sharing this here, because I think we're all trying to figure out, because creative careers have gotten more and more into focus than ever before. More and
Sure.
more people are paving that. Now what I see is a lot of people are trying to transition into this approach of, illustration. Not only having this, like, when I was there was this arts, or like, this is illustration. I still remember, we'll also talk about this, because I really want to hear what you, maybe if you have something. So
Sure.
when
Sure.
I transitioned from design to art,
Mhm.
again, where
So when
I
you
was
mean
working.
art, when you do you mean like you're working with like traditional art forms from India, or do you mean like art as in like a more traditional like canvas based art and like
Yeah.
sculpture
So
more?
when I was doing, like, I was in the digital space. I started, like, I was doing branding and then illustration and design.
Mm-hmm.
I was very, very raw at that point.
Okay.
But I figured, like, yeah, I wanted to create physically, and
Okay.
I wanted, the only thing, again, at that point I knew कि अच्छा या तो I can choose like a एक art career as an artist means, like, this
Mm-hmm.
is what an artist means, and this is what
Mm-hmm.
a designer means, and this is what
Sure.
this this is what I was sharing, like, when I went, where I was working with a couple of other creators, and I, for the first few times, I started introducing myself as an artist, because for
Mm-hmm.
me designer always felt like a little cap. Like, I was
Sure.
meant to always solve a problem, and
Yeah.
I realized I didn't want to do that. I
Okay.
felt like
Okay.
I was more like aesthetic driven, and, like, I wanted to have that breaking that boundary, because
Mm-hmm.
that I didn't want to just call myself as a designer. I wanted to have that, and it would be completely something I imposed on myself. But
Sure. Yeah.
primarily, when we associate design with something, it is like, you need to solve a problem. It needs to be functional. And I'm like, I don't want to make anything functional
Mm-hmm.
for now. I just want to explore art as a creative form.
Mm-hmm.
And when I started introducing that, a lot of times, where I was working in this space, people would, like, no, they wouldn't call me like an artist. They would call me like, oh, you're a designer, because you come from
Okay.
a design school.
Mm-hmm.
You're not this. And then they were like, okay, art is this is illustration, or like, oh, this
Mm-hmm.
is graphic design. And so I felt this so much tormented, and mentally, like, it was so hard, because I was not able to grasp that what I wanted.
Mm-hmm.
And I felt like I had to fit into this one definition, or I
Mm-hmm.
have to be either this or that. And I
Okay.
wasn't fully convinced which side I needed to go.
Mm-hmm.
And people now, what I love now is that people have this, like, we all have these blurring boundaries.
Sure.
Like you're a
Yeah.
fashion designer, you're an artist, you're a designer, and there are so many other things that you're a copywriter. You I mean, there's so many things that we as creatives, it's not just one boundary
Yeah.
that we can box ourselves into. And I think that was my biggest struggle at that point, that I didn't realize, or I didn't have the support or the exposure to understand that I didn't have to just fix into one box. That
Yeah.
this is okay, this is what you want to be. Coming back to the point, I see a lot of people now understanding that traditional arts, let's say people who are painting on canvas, making paintings,
Mm.
maybe like let's say we have exposure of fashion and all of that, and a lot of people don't.
Mm-hmm.
And this is such a lucrative way to make your products, like make your art into something, especially also having like a stable income stream, like
Mm-hmm.
another income stream. And I see a lot of artists now trying to get into this, like creating their merchandise, having
Sure.
apparels,
Mm.
bringing the art onto. For you it seems like the other way around,
To a
like you
certain
came from
extent. Yeah. I mean,
that.
I will, like, I don't know. Sorry, continue. What is the question though? Like, what do I feel about this? Or
So
like,
my question is, how has, like, do you see like this transition for yourself from fashion to art? Like,
hmm
how did you think that you wanted to be an artist? Like, is from
So for
artist?
me, all of this is the struggle that you faced about is sort of compartmentalizing like where it is. I have always looked at it as like super malleable and flowy. Like for me, like all of these things like doesn't really matter. The only thing I never call myself, and I do agree that I'm not a graphic designer, because I feel like
Okay.
a graphic designer is somebody who has the bandwidth of doing something in 25 different styles. So if
Yeah.
somebody comes with a project, that person will be able to execute it in a style which is super minimal, super maximal,
Yeah.
and everything in between. And they have the skill set to do that. I don't feel
Yeah.
like I do. That is why the only word, if somebody calls me a graphic designer, I correct and say I'm not a graphic designer, because I know that I can't. I can only do a very specific style, and 20% here and 20% there, and that's like my niche. And there are other things that I can attempt, but I'll never do it as well as a professional graphic designer can,
Yeah.
because I don't have the skill set to even be able to execute something like that. But apart from that, I feel like all of the other things for me in my head are like super malleable, because everything in a way is just about putting out like your creative energy. So that can
Yeah.
be in like a format of like an apparel if you want, that can be a canvas one day if you want, that can be 5 lines of copy, but it's all
Yeah.
coming out of the same person and the same inherent thought process. So I
Yeah.
have never looked at it in super like compartmentalized way. So I didn't really, even when I was transitioning from like making hardcore apparel to like illustrations, I enjoyed it at the beginning a lot because it was very different from doing apparel. And also the apparel I was doing at that time, it's not like I had 100% say creatively, right? So it's like a
Yeah.
cog in the wheel, and you are participating
Yeah.
in the creative process, but you have like a senior designer, you have a creative director,
Yeah.
you have a buyer. So there's enough changes. It's not when the product finally goes on the website, you can't take claim of it as your own,
Yeah.
because there are
Yeah.
like 10 people in the design chain. Uh,
Right.
and now like and now like coming back to like the idea of like, so apparel is something personally which I am not sure whether I'll ever do apparel again in when I'm doing my merch also, like because I know the trouble that it takes to make good apparel in
Oh,
correct sizing and correct fabric and
yeah.
like everything, where I'm like, dude, this is too complicated a process to do. If I That's why the
Yeah.
merch that I have, also very little merch, is more like size agnostic merch, which is like coasters
Yeah.
and like cushion covers and like art prints and phone covers, where I don't need to really bother about the human body and the sizing and the fabric and the wash and number. Because when you've been too much into that field, you can't just casually make apparel. You
Again,
It's
I
just like
agree.
I know too much about this to just put out
Yeah.
a product out there without
Yeah.
giving them the best product, because I have been like, I know
Yeah.
what are the things that can go wrong with the apparel. But I never
Yeah.
compartmentalize myself. Like I feel like tomorrow, like if somebody comes up to me and wants me to do a project where I have to like, I don't know, design like something bizarre, like design beds, I'll find a way to make it like a still illustrator bed. So I don't
I love
really
the thought.
have like
I think that's,
boxes.
and I think that's what I feel like is happening now. There I feel there are like these two industries on two different spectrums which actually belong in the center, and
Yeah.
eventually I see like by bit there is a lot of blurring that's happening, because
Yeah.
um when I went to this side of the spectrum, which is especially, and I'm specifically saying this from India, because
hmm
when I transitioned, like, and again, when I felt like I transitioned, for me, it was a big transition when I decided to shut down my business. because
Hmm.
I realized that this wasn't my ultimate calling. I couldn't see myself running a factory.
Sustaining this for the next year, sure.
Yeah. I mean, I knew if I, even if I could scale this, I knew that how I can work this around. But I knew if I did this, I will have to take over a factory. I will have to take
Yeah,
over like a
yeah,
production. And
correct.
as I would grow, I would need to be looking at financing. I would have to be like
Yeah,
looking at marketing, sales, and like all of that. And there will be very little like time that will be left for me to as a creator.
it's so
And
true.
I
What
wasn't
happens?
ready.
My
Go ahead.
creative director, when I was working in Agio, when at that time I was very kicked about starting my own brand. So I discussed this with her. I'm like, I'm thinking about starting my own brand. She's like, you love designing clothes, right? I said, yes. She said, when you
Yeah.
start your own brand, that will be 10% of what you will do, and the rest 90% will be other shit. So the day you are ready to do that 90%, only start your brand then. And I was too stupid that time to understand. But as I'm growing
Yeah.
older and I'm like hearing other experiences from people who've been, that's true, right? Like your creative part of
100%.
it is so small and the rest of it is such a large chunk of your time.
Right. Absolutely. And that's when I didn't know about this. And I felt like
Yeah,
I came from
correct.
that imaginary land that I felt like, okay, everything will happen. I would be sitting like in this place and then
Mm.
creating concepts and
Yeah.
like and the idea that we're always sold because and that is why like this conversation means so much because we never speak about what goes behind. Like
Mm.
there's so much that goes behind that scene, that perfect artwork. There are so many people working around it, and as a creator I think fundamentally I needed to have this lesson to realize, am I a creator more, or I
Mm.
am like
A
the
more of an
other.
entrepreneur and a business person. Yeah.
Yeah. And now I come from a point, I have another business and I realize like, okay, why this feels more to me. And then like, when I decided, okay, this is what my future would look like if I continue. And I was like, I
Mm.
can't. I went into because I'd put all these savings, like everything
Yeah.
I'd earned so
Yeah, that's
far,
the thing with apparel, right? It's such a like capital intensive
capital
like thing.
intensive.
So you can't just casually enter it without knowing I'm going to pump so much money in it for the next 5 years, and then maybe there'll be a return on the investment after 5, 7 years. So
And
I
then
am
you have this
personally
like,
very apprehensive about doing that. Like it's not
I
as
think
easy as like opening a
as
laptop and being like like a digital illustrator.
and then you have time, like as an illustrator you still, your capital investment is still so long, you can always take
Correct.
twist and turn.
Correct.
And I
Exactly.
remember like I came from this whole, like I have to, let me let her go.
Yeah, yeah, sure.
Like I came from this idea कि अच्छा I want to create this like big massive brand, so I had like a huge branding. Thankfully I
Mm.
had the design skill, so I didn't have to pay out
You did
someone
have to
else to
pay
do that
somebody
for me.
else. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, so I saved on that cost, but even though I invested like into like, and that point like there wasn't so much awareness about sustainability and all of that, so I needed to have like these huge packaging and like
Mm.
like all of that. And I realized what a idiot I was putting right my money in the beginning into all of these things that could have been
Yeah.
figured out later. But again, we always learn. So at that point I realized, okay, I didn't want to move forward, and I was like, "ठीक है, now I realized I wanted to be a creator." So I was like,
Mm.
what next? Like
Yeah.
designers make products. I don't want to make products. I want to create something, and then jo bhi whatever happens, I can
Mm.
do that. So that was the distinction for me. Okay, I don't want to be a designer. I want to be an artist. I didn't know,
Artist. Okay.
I had no clarity about how I would move forward. So I was just navigating. And that's when this, and I had no like influence before that, oh, I'm a designer or I'm an artist or I'm an illustrator. I was like, for me it was always about creating something. And the project that we even did with future groups was about illustration. But again, you
Okay.
always forget about things that you do, but then you connect the dots.
Good.
So I was like, okay, now I'll go like, I'll be like an artist and I will just make something and then sell that.
Hmm.
For me, that was the simplest, honest explanation. Make
Hmm.
anything that I want and then sell that. I don't have to
Hmm.
solve a problem, make
Problem.
a
Or like listen
complex
to a
thing.
brief. Yeah.
Yeah, and like people tell me what, like this is what is happening, should I make something around that? I didn't, I just wanted to create whatever interested me and then sell that. So that was my typical thing. And then I came to this whole thing and I was like, what's happening? I mean, it's not as simple as I thought. Then there was this conversation, okay, oh no, you're this, you're that, oh, fine artists don't do this. And then So that was my triggering point. I was like, I'm done with this. If I
Hmm.
continue to do this, I need to still pay my bills. I need to go into a
Yeah.
world where I feel creatively liberated. I don't feel restricted. And that's when Arts to Hearts happened. Because I
Okay.
realized that I was in the wrong company, the first and foremost. I wasn't in
Hmm.
the right mindset. Like, it really matters the people you're around with,
You're
and you need to
surrounded
have
with,
a
yeah.
similar mindset. And that's when I switched things up and I was like, I don't care. I need to make sure I survive this because this is the only way I can live. There's no there's no other way I can do anything around this. This is the only thing I know and I needed to make this through. Luckily I found my way around it. But I know that this is such a real problem for a lot of people because if you've not come like people who I have so many people who come from art school and they have
Hmm.
so many inhibitions that has been systematically like
You're
brought
talking about
down
like
to this.
hardcore like fine art schools.
Yeah, fine art schools.
Wow.
Like, I remember people like, I won't quote this. Like
Yeah.
someone saying like, oh, I can't have my work on this because I will
Taken
not be as
seriously as
prestigious.
a fine artist. Yeah.
Yeah, or I can't share too much of my work on Instagram. I wouldn't be taken seriously, or I wouldn't
I've
do
heard
that.
about these things. Yeah.
And I was like, and because when you're in an industry that you're very new in, for me, the thing was, I'd already messed up something and I'd lost a little bit of my own confidence because I felt like
Hmm.
all my life I wanted to be like a designer. And then, you know,
But like in
so I
a
like,
essentially like in an art space like this, when you start creating, do you like find an agent and then you go ahead with it, or like what is the, or do you
so
just
yeah,
start
again,
like
there is all of this is
there is
blur.
no
I
rule?
mean,
Okay, whatever you,
you
however you want to
actually
navigate.
today you're an illustrator, you find an agent and can go into licensing. That's what I've been experiencing now. Like, there are no lines today. There are artists, successful artists, who are like creating traditional art, who are exhibiting, let's
Okay.
say in traditional arts, let's say
Yeah.
exhibiting their work with galleries or independently
Hmm.
selling their prints or canvas or original artworks. They're collaborating with brands and creating art product whatever for them. They're selling prints, like
Hmm.
licensing prints. They're into
Hmm.
licensing also. Let's say
But
you are
that,
also into licensing.
but I would assume that that would happen when you have like a fair amount of success that you already have, to sort of have like brands reaching out to you to put your signature artwork in a
A-
product.
actually actually that's something that's happened with you, but a lot of people, if you see, like our pattern makers, they're like print
Oh,
illustrators.
okay, okay,
So
okay.
they pick up
Yeah,
whatever
yeah,
body of style works, like
yeah. I know.
suits you. Like, so
But then
again,
they wouldn't be in the category of a traditional artist. Then, like they would be like more like, yeah. I know the pattern makers, and I've seen a lot of those that they license their work a lot and like work with international clients from whatever, create a bank of illustrations and things like that.
have you heard of Ritika Merchant?
Yeah, I have heard of Ritika
Yeah.
Merchant.
So Ritika Merchant is a traditional artist. Like, I mean,
Correct, exactly. For her,
I hate this
for
word. I
her, for
hate
me,
this
she's a
word.
fine artist. Yeah, but yeah, but
Yeah.
she's like a, she creates like huge. She's worked with Chloe and stuff, right? Like,
Yeah, she had like a huge collaboration with Chloe. She's done such massive collaborations in very different spectrums. You
also
see,
she's
like,
crazy popular. No, like she is like extremely successful.
but even if you see today, there are people who are. It's about, I think it's about blurring these lines. Once you reach a like, once you get over this own inhibition of seeing your art in only one form or defining it in only one form, it can be anything and everything that you want it to be. Like
Hmm.
initially people were very inherent about this fact that, okay, I don't want to, i I only want to show my work here, or
Hmm.
I'm in today. If you show your work in a gallery today, you're a fine artist. I mean, what else? I mean,
Hmm.
how do we decide who is something and who's something not?
Not sure.
Okay, we've had this very interesting conversation. Do you have, okay, let me ask you, Dick, have you heard anything crazy in your career so far, like especially being a creative, like people have said you, like I shared, how an artist or something, anything that you've heard or experienced?
And I'm sure I have, but I need to like think about it. Like, I put me in a spot. Let me think. Of course, I must have heard like a lot of bizarre things, but it's like sticking out. I think that like when I was doing like taking up fashion design, then there was like obviously like a constant like low hanging fruit joke where everybody's like, "Oh, you're like a tailor, tailor, tailor."
Yeah,
Like, "Oh my
yeah,
god,
yeah.
I can't believe like you studied science and now you're going to become like a tailor." So that was
Yeah.
always there, and like, but which is fine. Like I don't mind because like stitching garments is crazy hard. If I can be a great
Oh
tailor, like you
God.
have no idea how much business I'd do if I
Yes.
was a fantastic tailor. Okay, like tailors
Yes.
are extremely valued and they make damn good things. Okay, ask
Yes.
anybody. The first thing that they ask is that they want to find a good tailor in a city.
Good
Okay,
picture.
how
Yeah.
are their blouses? So I didn't find
Yeah.
anything degrading in being a tailor because I was horrible at stitching in college. So I really had to bug up. So I was like, if I'm a tailor, that's not bad. But I'm trying to remember. I just think I can't remember offhand. Like if there was something which was particularly scathing. But I think for a long time in my own head, like once I switched over to freelance, I think I felt a little inadequate until I was getting the projects of the caliber that I
Yeah.
wanted. Because when I would go into social gatherings or like when I would meet in a family gathering or like when I would, it was not so much with friends, but more with relatives probably,
Yeah.
where I was like, oh, I'm the kind of, I was in a corporate job, which everybody knows, like Mintra, actually, these names everybody knows. So it's super
Yeah.
easy to tell
Everybody
them I
knows.
work for a Mintra.
Yeah.
And then saying, oh, I'm like a freelance artist. And then they'll be like, oh, and very confused then obviously, which is fine. I don't mind educating someone. But I felt like until I had the backing of like a certain clients that I worked with,
Yeah.
I felt like very low in confidence to kind of even explain to somebody else what exactly I did. I felt like, am I in the right path? Now, of
Yeah.
course, like when I go into like an event or like meet new people, I just say two words and I show them my Instagram profile, show them two projects, and they're intrigued. And I'm like, I'm done. I don't even need to speak anymore. But yeah, but I don't think they said anything scathing. I think I had like
Yeah.
internalized uh, almost like I don't know, like some amount of apprehension that what have I done? Like, is this the correct path? And I have don't even
Yeah.
know how to explain to people like basically that time I was kind of jobless because waiting for the
Yeah.
right work to come.
That's very interesting. And I think, again, something very essential we need to talk about is a lot of times, again, and especially coming from you, we also spoke about this in the beginning, someone who already has a backing of a prestigious clientele list, let's say, brands and names that people want to work with, everyone wants to work with. Um, when you transition from a corporate job to being a freelance,
Hmm.
it's not it's like poles apart, it's like earths apart, like
Yeah,
it's those spectrums. And a lot of times our self-worth is also associated with our work, mostly
sure.
associated with our work.
Yeah.
And it's even, I always say that it's so hard to be a creative in India specifically, like
Hmm.
in these countries which have little less exposure, or at least maybe that's been something, my own experience, but I believe that that's something still
Yeah,
I
I think
feel like.
yeah, it is true.
Yeah. So how was that transition for you, and accepting, like, for a long time for me the whole imposter syndrome was so hard,
Mm-hmm.
because like you said, like I felt like all my friends were in stable jobs. I would,
Sure.
if I would find, no, I didn't care about how much money I made, but the validation of that, somebody, when someone would ask me what I did, even today when someone
Yeah.
asks me what I do, because there are so many things I do and most of them are very, like, they don't know what it means,
Mm.
like I remember, again, I wouldn't say, someone telling me, I don't know if you've heard this, you like, and someone from my own family, so he said,
Okay.
that you have like a such a great job, you just have to con people into buying your work for
Oh my
thousands or
God.
lakhs or whatever money, or like you, because they think like you just have to make something pretty, or you have to just do this, and
But then you
you
have to
have to,
con somebody. So you have to
yeah.
convince somebody else. You.
Yeah,
Oh my
because
God.
they feel like, oh, this is art. You can sell this for 500, or like this dollar or whatever. Why would you
That's so
sell
rude.
it for like
That's so,
1,000? So I believe if you hear the podcast, you'll hear. I mean, things that we wouldn't even like, and it's so terrible. It hurts your, like,
sure.
you you question every little being of what you do. And I have struggled this for so long, because I felt like, okay, am I, for once it also sticks to your mind, am I even doing this,
Yeah.
is this person
Correct.
even saying it right? And when they want you to define, okay, I'm a doctor, I'm this, or I'm an owner of this, and you explain, okay, what you do, like, how
Hmm.
do you explain what you do,
Correct.
how has, and this again, your revenue streams, and like, having consistent income when you transition, how, especially coming from a sound few years of working in the corporate, having that stable income, what was that transition for you?
To be very honest, like initially, like I did like a couple of projects while I was still like working with Mintra towards the end, and then I was like, okay, this is my time because I felt like that time that, like if you have like something which is hot on Instagram, like until you leverage it like quite fast, then maybe in another 6 months
Yeah.
or like 1 year, there'll
And
be like 20 other artists. And because every day the number of illustrators, at least I keep seeing,
right.
is 10x, 20x, 30x. So I felt like it was my hot moment to like kind of
Yeah.
full-fledged get into freelance, because I wasn't being able to manage time wise, because I was like literally sleeping for 4 hours and doing all this, and it just felt like it was unfair to the corporate job also, and it was unfair to the project. So that's when I was like, okay, so this is like my time to exit and like, get into this like full-fledged. And I did have like, I knew that it was never going to be a situation, because I come from that amount of privilege that I am moving back home. Okay, first step was I was moving back to Kolkata. In right before quitting, in about 8 months, I was going to get married. So I knew no matter what, I'm going to get food and I'm going
Oh
to get
God.
shelter, which is like 90% more than most people can say. Okay, so
Yes.
I've
Yes.
already won like the battle where I am so privileged that I will never have a situation where I will not have like a roof and like a food. So now I can truly concentrate on like, making the money that I want, or like just it's not even money. Like till now, I feel like first 5 6 years goes in just building a reputation and building a brand, and money eventually is like a long term return in
Yeah.
like in my headspace at least. So it did take like a little bit. So then immediately after I left for 2 months, I didn't get any work, and in my head I was like, "But this was my hot minute." I left because I was expecting so much work.
And before that,
Okay.
what kind of work had you already done?
So that time, so right before leaving Mintra, I'd done the project for Levi's where I'd showcased in their five for
Okay.
one day,
Oh, I
and I
remember
had
that project.
been approached by this company to do like an entire branding and artworks for their restaurant, and that was the project on the back of which I was like, I'm finally ready to leave it, and it was like a good look.
Yeah.
And after I left it, within 2 weeks, something happened, and the project never went through.
Oh
So
God.
I was like, holy shit, like I left my company thinking that
Because
I'm
of
going to be
this.
doing something so huge where I'm
Yeah.
branding an entire restaurant in Bangalore, but that never happened. So then, so it was this, I will not like sugarcoat it. There was like extremely low and very, very anxiety inducing months, which was there. And the only thing was like, since I was going to get married in some time, I felt like there was a sort of a nice distraction where I was planning the wedding. So whenever, and I would like put all my creativity in like planning this, planning that. So I felt
Which you
like
did.
that was a good, like, yeah, that was like a good distraction. So I didn't have like an episode where it full fledged transitioned into something that I needed to consult like a doctor or like some therapist.
Yeah.
But it was super anxiety inducing and low, because like you said, like so much of our self-worth unfortunately is associated with the work that we do, that you just kind of can't dismiss it, especially if you've been somebody who has been sort of like a achiever from the beginning. You're not somebody
Yeah.
who is like, like is like a super laid back person to begin with personally.
Yeah.
But I think eventually after like doing it for almost two
And
and
I
a
think
half years now.
I just want to add to this. I think it's also driven with the fact that we're all we what we are also shown is that okay, you had one moment, and I'm telling you, a lot of people who are listening to your story. You told me this is your first podcast. I don't
Yeah.
know how many times you've spoken about this, but I'm telling you because this was my perception, let alone anyone else, that
Yeah.
we like you see this person, oh he has this or she has this one job, oh the next moment she's blown over, she's doing good,
Exactly.
so
She's
good,
doing
like,
amazing. And yeah, you
yeah,
see
I
that.
mean,
Yeah. So I will
this is
not put
the
it that.
funny bit.
Yeah, so I didn't have work. Like even now when I look at it, like at this month only in January I didn't have any work. Like at the beginning of the year I had COVID, and I was like, okay, fine. In my head I was like, good, like at least 10 days I'm going to give myself a break, and then queries will come in and I'll start working. But nothing. Now is when I'm like talking to people again to like figure out like Feb what work I'm going to do. I'm going to plan it out. But then I sort of like have realized that with this is that you can't look at it as a sum total of like a day. At the end of the
Yeah,
year, you should be okay with knowing you've made this much money. This is the work that you have done, and this is the growth that has happened. But if you look at it month wise, then it's not going to be like that, because
yeah,
there is no way you can sort of strike a balance if you're dependent on external factors to give you work,
yeah,
where you will be like, because there have been like weeks where I don't have work, and I know the next 2 weeks I'll probably sleep for 3 hours, which people will be like, oh, terrible, you must maintain like a routine and a schedule. But what do I do? Like
true.
if I have like three people who are reaching me at the same time and all the projects are amazing and I can't say no, and I have
Yeah,
already spent a month without working, like me as a person, what will I do? Next step, of
yeah.
course, would be to like hire like an intern or like hire like somebody else in the team and sort of like divide the work, but it's always going to be that.
And I think this is something a lot of us struggle with also now, a
Yeah.
very essential point, especially working as solopreneurs, independent
Yeah.
creatives. One of the hardest thing is to hire people and delegate because
Exactly.
you have,
So yeah,
go
I
ahead, go ahead. I
absolutely.
want to hear
No,
your
I
thoughts
would,
on this.
because whenever I've thought about like okay, I can probably have like some projects where I'll get somebody else on board. My thing has always been like, okay, so I need to train somebody. I need to teach this person all the
Yeah.
things that I know, because I need to be they need to be executing things in my style. Now it's such a strange, almost like a thing of like, I don't want to teach them everything that I know, but if they're
Yeah.
working for me, they have to do everything that I know. Otherwise, what is the point of this whole exercise? And it's
Yeah.
just like, and every time I've gone to them, I'm like, no, I'll only sleep for 2 hours less and I'll only finish it myself. Okay, and it's, I mean, I'm not at that point of scalability where I need somebody, but I know if this continues for some more time, I'll probably have to. And I haven't faced that dilemma of actually being in the situation to hire, but whenever I think about it, only I get apprehensive.
Yeah, yeah, that's true. And I think this is such a big learning curve for all of us. And again, training and like this so skill driven, like it is something
Yeah.
that you would do certain way, and then you want people to do it certain way, and then it takes a lot of time. And I think just this problem of all I can do this, like I know how to
Myself,
do
yeah.
this. I think, yeah, like this is such a common problem we all have, that we feel like, oh, I can. It's only me who can do this the way I want. Nobody else can do this,
Yeah,
and we.
yeah.
That's one of the biggest hurdles. My last question, and then we'll jump onto the rapid fire. Which
Sure,
this
sure.
question I really want to ask, because a lot of people who are listening to this episode of our community, this is like a hot topic. Like people want to, especially like in the fine arts, like for the design world, it was still very common to work with brands and reach out or not, or like to have these collaborations. On the bigger spectrums, collaborations have become a language that like is there with every industry now. Not, it wasn't that way in the beginning.
Sure.
um a lot of artists now, and since art collaborations are only elevating now than ever, like from the fine arts, from NFTs to
Yeah.
like wherever we see, this is what the hot thing is. No matter what scale of brand or artist you are, there people are coming together and working. You've had success with working with one of the top names. What are your suggestions, your own learnings that you would like to
Hmm.
share with people who want to who want to get their work and collaborate with brands and pitch themselves, or how has your journey also been with the same?
So I think one thing is like super important if you're in any creative field, and I actually was thinking about this a couple of days ago also, that uh, you need to give enough time to yourself as a creative to figure out what is your exact style and what is your aesthetic sensibility. Because aesthetic is such a big bucket. It should be such that
Yeah.
if somebody comes to me and tells me to make a phone cover, if somebody comes and tells me to make like a piece of jewelry, if somebody comes and tells me to make like shoes, whatever the product is, it doesn't matter. You should have your voice and your sensibility in terms of a visual aesthetic, which can translate into a million different products and a million different concepts and ideas, whether it's invitation cards or whether it's a pair of shoes. Okay, that's when you are like a successful art person in my head, because there are some people artistically where a lot of these things cannot translate into a lot of product, and that is the hard truth of it. That's also fine, but there is like, but that building that sensibility and aesthetic is such a long and important process, that until you get that kind of like molded, if big brands come to you, you will not be able to understand where to draw the line. Because if it's supposed to be 40-50% of your sensibility and 40-50% of the brand sensibility, until that 40-50% is, you have clarity of what that is in your head, then you will end up doing something which you're not proud of, or which the brand will also be like, but I can't see your design sensibility in this. So it takes a lot of time, and then you need to properly like, because I personally, when I started the illustration page also, there were like a few points that I told myself. I'm like, what are the words that you associate with your artwork and your brand? So there were words like maximal, intricate, colorful, humorous, playful. So I had this like bunch of like 10 keywords that I put in. I'm like, no matter what I do, at least four
This
or
needs to
five
come
of
in.
these keywords need to, and if I don't, it's not going up in my page, it's not going up in anything that I do. So this is like what my identity is, and it takes a lot of time to reach that point. It's not, that's what I said,
Yeah.
like I started drawing when I was 4 years old, and I'm 30 today, where I'm like super concrete and clear about exactly what I like and what color I'll use with what. So a
Yeah.
lot of people see this on Instagram and think that, oh, I can do this like in 5 days. I just take like five reference photos, put everything together, and whoa, this is my aesthetic. I have been seeing so much of that recently, and it really bothers me, because I'm like, I understand you're
Yeah.
really young. There are some people who are just naturally extremely talented. I do agree
Right.
to that. That, you know,
Yeah.
like some people are so talented at 19 that I'll never reach that at 45 also. So I get that. I'm not questioning those people, but a lot of people are just coming in looking at the end result. where they
Yeah.
don't understand that you need to put in the time and the effort to reach a point to understand that this is what my aesthetic sensibility is, and then you go into the process of like working with another brand and collaborating. You can't see the end result and be like, I'll start at 22 and at 23 I'll have like an Instagram page with like 1 million followers, and by 24 I'll be like doing all of that, and your aesthetic is not your aesthetic because you built it up kind of in a way plagiarizing somebody else's idea, and you
Yeah.
liked it, so this is what you did. And this is a very common like
Yeah.
recurring theme that I'm seeing with social media, where I can't distinguish between some people's work. There is like a
Yeah.
huge
And it's
barrage
like a
of people who
success
are just,
formula.
yeah, it's exactly like a format that you have taken, and it's unbelievable that you want to be a successful creative and nobody knows what your sensibility exactly is. You can do 5 projects, but in the seventh project, if you don't know what you are doing, that it ain't gonna work. Like if you think you're sustaining it for the next 30 years, if you're doing this that you want to chill for like 4, 5 years, 3, 4 years, do a nice page, you have a separate job on the side, sure, no problem. That's great. That's your creative output. But if you want to make a successful career out of it where you're sustaining the next 30, 40 years, and you will have your own range of merchandise in the future, you will have your own, eventually, you will have a studio with 5 people, then you kind of need to work on that aspect. And then I think with like just generally when you're working with like brands and all, like I think like technical advice is like to get like a lot of things which is super clear in the contract and in paper, so that later like they also don't end up like utilizing you for more than you had agreed on. So like those are like more technical aspects of like the collaboration. Like we're super clear of how many iterations you're going to do, how many changes you'll make in the artwork, what is the exact timeline that's agreed upon, what is the usage of the work, how long will they use it for, does the copyright of the work belong completely with them, or does it you can you use it also. So these are like technical things that you should make it as clear as possible so that nobody ends up taking advantage of you in the future.
Love that. I think they're very practical points that we all should. Acha, one last, again, just a sub of this. Again, a very, very common problem a lot of people face, which is not only in context to collaboration with any project, because we have no rule book, there are no standardization, there's no,
Sure.
like, there's nothing, there's anything, like we all build for our own selves depending on the
Yeah.
knowledge and self-worth and all of those things,
Correct.
that or
Correct.
sometimes what someone also offers us. This is
Sure.
a discussion I've had so many times, because there is, in India, I can vouch for this, there's a huge lack for transparency. Like I was so grateful to find a community where I was able to figure out, okay, you know, if this is the kind of work I've got, what should I charge? Because I didn't know. I
Yeah.
didn't know. I never got a project
Yeah,
like this.
clarity
Now
on this.
that I do, and you don't want to be dumb. You don't want to be taken advantage of. You don't want to look too overconfident. Like we all have these very,
Yeah.
very common inhibitions that, um, you know. And a lot of times I didn't find that transparency enough around me. And I was like,
Hmm.
you know, how do I do this? How do I do that? Eventually I was able to figure it out, but I still, you know, this is something that we all creative people um, experience. When you started work, and this is something that people specifically experience with working with brands,
Hmm.
because this is, or anything contractual, because that is when you have to, like, you have to define your worth. And
Yeah.
what are your advices on figuring out how to like price themselves for projects that, you know, are either in collaboration, brand driven, licensing? How did you figure that out for yourself?
I don't think I figured it out yet. I'm telling you, like this is like an ongoing process. I don't think I'm quite happy with the numbers that I have, and I don't think there ever will be any standardization, to be very honest. And I don't think there will ever be any transparency about this, to be honest, because this is one of those things which is almost like your secret sauce, and you will might not want to reveal to somebody else how what you would feel like something is worth. As time has progressed, of course, I've had more confidence to demand certain prices because I
Yeah,
felt like in the past I have like undersold myself like crazy. But
yeah,
I this is one topic where I genuinely would like to advise people, but I feel like I also don't know enough to advise
yeah,
because this has only been like 2.5 years, and I am not
yeah,
one of those people who thinks that it is the most conducive thing to sort of like give pricing only on the basis of hours, because that kind of
yeah,
is a very old school way of looking at your work.
absolutely.
Because I mean, in your head, like it might take me 3 hours, but it has taken me a lot of time to make sure is done in 3 hours. And also, until you start the project, you don't really know the number of hours you're going to spend on it for a lot of work. So it doesn't
Absolutely.
matter. And especially the only thing I can probably like tell is that if your artwork is going into something that is going to be on some product which is going to be like sold in like hundreds or thousands, then sometimes it's not a bad idea to like have like a profit sharing model along with like a design fee, because then you
Yeah,
get sort of a royalty to every piece that you do. But apart from that, like this is something you'll have to figure out. Every person will have to go on that journey and figure it
yeah,
out on their own, and only after a certain point be okay with the fact that I'm okay with this pricing. Nobody else
yeah,
can go on that journey for you, because if I ask somebody else for advice who might be doing it for longer, might be charging 5x the amount, because that person believes that it is worth 5x the amount. And who am I
yeah,
to compare and say that you are not worth
yeah.
5x the amount?
I agree. But you know what? I was so happy to find out about artist pricing guide. I don't know if you know about that. So this is like a standardized pricing guide that's been
Okay.
published in the US. So this is
Okay.
like, and I think we absolutely need something like this in India. A lot of time, like something is like how much. I think charging is, of course, our skill and everything, but it's also a big game of self-worth. How much
Yeah,
can
sure.
we have the, like, I need to believe in myself first that I can ask for this, only then I can ask for something, no matter
Yeah.
how insane or how low or high it sounds. But sometimes we are all always finding like this starting point, like, okay, this is like a base, this is like something that you need, like a navigating point from where you want to go. And for a long time I didn't know about this, but this like the idea of having like an artist pricing guide where everything is mentioned, like, and it's quite an old book, and a lot of people in the US always refer to that
Okay.
as like a base pricing structure.
Okay.
Even for me, when I started in India, selling my work, I didn't know if I was like hitting the bush. i didn't
Mm.
have I didn't know what I was charging for, if I was charging too high. Sometimes when I felt like someone was buying too easy, I felt it was too low. When
Too
someone
low,
would like
correct.
I would be like,
Yeah.
sometimes I would feel like, oh, this is too high. Why would someone, you had this notion that kept on going. When I figured, okay, this is like an average, this is how my friends, like people from our community, and I was so grateful to have that transparency. Okay, this is how people charge, and this is like a base, and this is how, then I knew, okay, now it's my decision which way I want to go into. But I know, okay, this is like a structure that people follow if they want to. If not, I can always build something on my own. I think just having like a basic trans, because I love this idea when a lot of people say, like, when we're undercharging ourselves, we're also not only undercharging us, we're also paving that path for a lot of people who are going to be around us, our own community. Because like it's like this, and for 4 years creative people have been taken advantage of, because
Yeah.
we've always, like, there's no substantial, like, you can know, okay, as a doctor, I think non-substantially, like, it's nothing is in physical form. Your creativity can never be valued in like a weighing scale. Okay, this
Mm.
is how much you, so it's still a very blurry topic, but I think it's something that we all um are trying our best to figure out.
But I don't know, like if you do this in India, also like a India like standard price. I don't know, because if a brand goes out there and wants an illustration, say for like their social media, there'll be somebody who'll agree to it for 1,500 bucks also, and there'll be somebody who'll charge 15 lakhs also. So the scope is, and this
Absolutely.
can be
But I think
irrespective of.
you're saying today this from a place of where you build your career. When you don't know where to start from, I think a lot of people, when they're navigating and entering into an industry, they don't, I mean, you
So
don't
so
know.
they need to start from the point which they think they're comfortable with to do so, and then you need to make sure. The only thing is that if you're charging something in year one, and there's something in year two, and something in say year three of your freelance life in year four, you should make sure that there is a considerable hike if you are also delivering better products in a better, like more concise time and all of that. Because today, like it's such a, like, am I happy with all the pricing that I've done? I'm definitely not. So it's not like I have gone to every project and like I can't tell with conviction that I've done great. There's so many things that I
Yeah.
know I've undercharged, and maybe one or two where I feel like, oh, maybe that person has given me more money than I deserved for this. But that is
Yeah,
far
yeah.
in between. Most of it is like, oh,
And
maybe I
yeah,
should
and
have,
I think
yeah,
these are all also variable waypoints of our viewing our own work. And then, like,
exactly.
again,
And
a lot of way we can't, like, not all creative things that you do have an exact ROI. Like,
exactly,
how much
exactly. And
impact?
for a lot of things, it's like while we want to say, okay, I'll never work for exposure, which is true. I might not work for exposure, but then tomorrow, like if something as huge as like Apple comes to me and says, okay, I will pay you 50% less than another client, but I'm going to make sure that product goes into all your Apple phones or something like that. Automatically,
Yeah,
the thing is that it's not as black and white as just being like, oh, I will
yeah,
never
yeah,
work for exposure,
absolutely.
because for something that big and lucrative, my rules might change.
Yeah, just one sec.
Yeah,
Band
yeah.
karo. Sorry. Yeah, absolutely. And I think just I feel like as we are all navigating, I think there are always ballparks that we all feel like comfortable, like just
Yeah,
like not feeling that.
you're taking too
I
much
think
of
I
an
remember,
advantage, basically. Huh?
yeah,
Yeah,
I think the 21-year-old me was always so like every, and this is something I've heard from so many people, like because they get so anxious and scared of, oh, what am
yeah,
I going to charge, or if I'm going to look like a fool, or like they're like, okay, let the client say no, because
yeah,
it's, and for a lot of people having this now, it's getting better and better because the conversation has been going on.
yeah.
Having the money conversation is one of the hardest things for people,
Sure.
especially the creatives.
Yeah,
Because like it's initially it was so taboo, like, okay, are you a sellout, or like, oh, you're like, you think too high of yourself, or like, all of these things that you're obviously constantly fed about, but also understanding the fact that we're all paying our bills. We're also like, as creatives, we're also businesses who are trying to make the best of what we are
yeah. I
doing.
don't think even we should just say we're paying our bills. Dude, why just paying our bills?
Yeah,
Why not like saving money, creating empires eventually? Like, why
empires,
should I just pay the
absolutely.
bills? Yeah.
I
Why is
love this
my
fact.
yeah? Why is
I have
my
this
like
idea.
place in society that I'm only going to pay my bills? I'll pay my bills. I want to buy a freaking house 10 years later and go and like redo it as my dream house. Why shouldn't I? Like, I want to
Yes,
have all
and
those
I
aspirations and more.
100%, 100. I so have a mentor, my mentor and coach, who's like somebody I really adore, and I think this was this learning for me also. Like, we had this hindrance. Like, a lot of times you feel uh, shallow. I don't know. I mean, we want to build a life that is not only just surviving and filling our necessities, but also saying, accepting the fact that I have a high ambition of living a
Yeah.
luxurious lifestyle, or like
Yeah.
I want to buy a Lamborghini, or I don't know, I whatever that our aspiration be. Or even if that means like you want to have a certain safety net in your bank account, or
Yeah,
for
I
your
think yeah,
own.
that's the thing. I think some careers it is not a taboo to have those aspirations, and in some careers it's like, oh, but your thing is just to like
Yeah.
create art for society. You're better than all of this. I'm not better than all
Yes.
of this. F no.
Okay, this was such an interesting conversation. I'm so grateful and so sorry I've taken a lot more time than I had asked you for. I am so excited. Can we jump on to the rapid fire if you're ready?
Yeah, sure.
Perfect. So it's going to be rapid. You have to be quick. Just give me what comes to your mind first. Okay? You wouldn't have too much time. I mean, you wouldn't have literally no time.
I might like skip a few. I can't if you ask me like favorite artists and
No,
all
no,
on a
there's no
spot. I can't.
skipping.
Yeah,
There's no
like
skipping. There's
I'm.
no skipping.
No, I'm really bad with names. Is what I mean. Like if somebody asks me like something, I'm just gonna like I can't
No,
do
no.
names. Everything else, I think I'm good.
Okay, let's try. Are you ready?
Hmm. Sure.
Okay, one, two, three. One thing you want to convey through your work in the arts.
Um, don't take yourself too seriously. It's all gonna
I'm
end
going to
anyways. Yeah.
write. I'm going to write this for myself.
Yeah.
One word that describes you the best.
Mm, over
Quick,
the
quick,
top.
quick.
Over the top is not really one word. Uh,
I'll buy that back. You have
charged, I guess.
another? Sure. Oh wow. If you could have a studio anywhere in the world, where would it be?
I think probably London or
Huh?
like
Really?
I
Why?
am like more of a cosmopolitan city person. So I want to go like I want to be in a place which is like a melting pot of like 5,000 different cultures. I don't. I've
Oh
been only
wow.
to London and New York in terms of cosmopolitan cities. So and I enjoyed London more than I did in New York.
Really? Wow.
Yeah, I'm a very city person.
Oh wow, that's so nice. Okay. Your biggest source of inspiration.
um, uh, I think conversation with friends and just being social because I draw a lot of inspiration from people
Yeah.
talking and conversing and kind of translate those things in my work.
When you say this, I feel like I'm also visualizing you like that person who has like a glass, who's into this small group, who has a glass of a drink and a part of a conversation, but actually your ears are eavesdropping on something interesting that's happening behind you.
Yeah, I can do both. I'm very like fun, like conversation, not as funny, but I love hearing people and like say when they're talking about something silly like their day or something. Like I feel like there is like so much when like a group of six, seven people from different professions and backgrounds come together and like chat over like drinks and food, and it's just like I just feel like you end up knowing and learning about so much.
Lovely, lovely. Okay. Who's your favorite women artist, designer, and why?
See, that's why I told you, like, don't give me like names.
This is a tough spot for everyone, so you take a moment.
I'll take a moment. Like quite a few women. So I love Alicia Souza. So
Oh yeah.
I'll tell you why, because I feel see, work wise, like there are like a few other artists, like for instance, worker who did the collaboration with Gucci, even Ritika
Yeah.
Merchant actually, whose
Yeah.
work I like truly genuinely like love and enjoy.
Yeah.
But I feel like Alicia in India is such a benchmark of what like a female illustrator can be, and that's why
Yeah.
like she is such a iconic woman in that space, because I feel like
Yeah.
she is the one whose artwork took Chumbak to where it is today, because she was the first
Yes.
person who designed the brand identity of a brand, of a proper homegrown design brand like Chumbak. And like she's like, though like aesthetically design wise, it's not like I'm like the same, come from the same sensibility and idea, but I
Yeah.
like respect the fact that she created this for a lot of people to follow,
Yes.
because she
Yes.
was one of the first people to be in this space and turn it into like a damn successful career where people know her, respect her, and more. She's doing wonderfully. On top of that, she has a family, she has kids, and she's doing it all.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
I feel like that's why she has like a special place. And recently in the Adobe Insider, she was one of the insiders, and it's the first time I connected with her. So for me, I was like, wow, this is like so insane that this woman who was the benchmark for so many of us, I'm actually talking to her.
Love that. And I adore her work. And I feel like any point anyone who's imagined to be like a illustrator hasn't, it's not possible to not
Hasn't
look.
end up, and the thing, yeah, exactly. Even if they don't know it's her work, they must have seen her work without realizing, because she's done so many
Yeah.
of these like really famous and iconic like artworks and illustrations, and the entire style of the way so many people have copied it after that. It's not even funny, but
Yeah.
she was the first
Yeah.
one.
And I
Yeah,
think what even she's not only like a good illustrator, but she's such an amazing human being.
seems, yeah,
Anyone can
definitely
vouch
seems
for.
like that. Yeah,
And that can like I just
come
love the
across.
humbleness that comes across her work. And
Yeah,
I think for I also told you this before, like for me, it's I fall in love with person, like an artist first, and then I like
and then
if yeah, if I'm like if I don't like you as a person, I am most probably going to, even if I like your work, I'm going to fall out of love. Because I think that's how, because you always want, our work becomes so personal so many times that the relationship with the viewer also becomes very personal. And I think
mm,
as a viewer, when you're also with Alicia, like you'll see her phase of like the illustration evolving from her being
exactly.
single.
Will too, correct. And you can see that
Yeah.
joy now about like illustrations about a son, and I love that.
Yeah.
I love that because if you draw experiences authentically from your life, your
Yeah.
art will slowly start progressing.
And then people connect because your experiences are
You will
as
find
much
new
real as,
audience.
yeah.
Exactly.
And also, like, your experience, we're all living beings. Our experiences overlap, we're only unique. I mean,
Hmm.
we are not going to, you're not, none of us have anything, we're not living on another planet. We have a distinctness, but there's so much similarity. Like, we're all, you are a woman, I'm a woman, we're creative. Like, there's so much that we can bring in common, that there's always authenticity, that you're always pulling together a group of people who have similar
Yeah.
experiences and belongingness like you. And I think Alicia does
Hmm.
such a fabulous job with that. I
Yeah.
absolutely agree. When I thought so I had these different phases and I wanted to explore what kind of creative I wanted to be.
Hmm.
When I
Hmm.
explored being a, like, I am a terrible, I'm terrible at this now. I know at that point I didn't. So I felt like
Okay.
making characters, or like, because I was so inspired of Alicia, like
Hmm.
having like these people who make these instant characters and like,
Yeah. These quirky characters, no, about
yeah,
yeah,
and
yeah.
then comic it like in such a quick, it's so
Hmm.
instinctive. Like even for Neha,
Yeah.
I feel like I don't, this is like a skill. It's so hard, it's terribly hard.
Yeah, definitely. Like you have to be like I feel inherently drawn towards
Yes,
observing people and their nuances to draw these characters so fast.
yes. Anyone who's listening and who doesn't know who we're talking about, you can go on the show notes and I'll link Neha's and Alicia both's work and a few screenshots so that you can actually understand what we're talking about. Okay, next question. Who's your go-to person when you're in trouble or in need of advice?
Mm, I think probably my sister. Like I feel
Oh,
like I yeah. If I not about advice, I'll never call her for advice. But if I'm in trouble, I can talk to her. I'm sorry. She's my younger sister, so we've gone through like different phases of like loving each other, hating each other.
wow.
But now that she's 27 and I'm 30, I feel like we're in the most evolved phase of our relationship, where we
Yeah.
can discuss like a lot of things which we did not discuss when we were 17, 18.
And
For
as I
some
think
odd
as we
reason.
I think as we grow older, this gap, whatever years we have, it just reduces. Like,
Exactly. And she, at the end of the day, you now realize the value of like a blood sibling, right? Right? You
yeah.
really can have conversations about your most inane thoughts without feeling judged. But I don't know, her advice I ain't gonna take. So, but I can talk to her about problems.
She's your savior, that means.
Yeah, in a way. Like I know for a fact that she'll be one of those people who will like empathize with me and be on my side. And then if
Yeah.
I'm wrong, she'll probably tell me a few days later. But like she's like, it's good to lash out if I have a problem with her.
Yeah. Yeah. Love that. Okay. What has he? Okay, this is a little more than one moment. So just can you share, like, I'm sure there must have been many. Can you share like one
Okay.
moment, something that you really cherish and recall and feel grateful for being who you are today, like as an artist, like choosing this creative career, having this creative path?
In terms of a moment that really stood out in my creative career, is that what you mean?
Yeah, something that you any in any context that you feel like you were very grateful for being an artist or having this creative career.
I don't know. I mean, this I can't put exact moment. See, these are some questions you should have given me from before. I should have like spent like at least 2 days
I would
like
have I would
retrospective
have
mulling
gotten
over
the
it.
happiness out of you.
I see a lot of like I think my like prize like if I think about like career-wide moments are like super like external validation based. So I don't know if
That's
that's a
okay.
good thing or a bad thing. Like it feels
That
like a little bit
happens.
of a like it's not one of those like, oh like some child
No,
saw my
no.
artwork and started crying and it was gratifying. It's not one of those
No, I
emotional
think
stories at all.
no. We're looking for the external also.
Okay.
We
So I
all
mean I
have. I
think
mean, this is again. This is what hearts to hearts is. Let's be honest. We all crave for external. Why do we have these
yeah.
vision boards and these things that I want to be featured here or I want to be here or there? We are all seeking external validation. I mean, this is a fact.
I think when I was like when I joined NIFT, like I actually had like a really good rank in the NIFT entrance exam. So I think one of the most because that was like a pivotal moment in my journey to choose this as opposed to getting into like a not I would have never been an engineer, but I was that time like thinking of doing like a undergrad in one of the science subjects, and I'd given the NIFT exam and I didn't get into NIT, so only the NIFT was the only creative exam left, and I like did exceedingly well in the NIFT entrance exam. And I remember that when I opened the website and my all India rank was 3, so I had completely like flipped out because that was the point when my parents also I think had a little more faith in the fact that okay maybe she is good at this. So that was one that I remember because that was the beginning of my career per se into leaving that side of my life behind and going into a creative side. And then is when I was contemplating on whether to become like a freelancer or not is when I had applied for a Curious Awards. I don't know whether you know there are these
Yeah, I know about
awards
that.
which is called the Curious Awards, and so there's a category for like which is called the Young Blood Award. So there's like
Yeah,
different real time pitches which you have to like. There are like a 3 4 different categories. One is pertaining to product design, some is about branding and things. And if you're below 27, you can apply for it. So I applied for one of the categories, which was completely out of my comfort zone because it was about branding and graphic. Until then, I was a hardcore fashion person designer. So I was like, if it let me just part. So I made like a
fair
proper
enough.
pitch where I like put like together all my ideas and graphics, and I knew I was competing with people who work in creative agencies, so they know very well how
Yeah,
to pitch a brand idea because that's a very different skill set from apparel, and people don't realize that
yeah,
because they
yeah,
all think it's a huge bucket of just creative people, but it's
yeah.
all different specific core talents.
Specific.
So I
Yeah,
applied for it, and I was shortlisted as one of the 3 finalists, and then I won that award. So I think
yeah,
that kind of gave me a push that there is possibility, and you're the one who's putting herself in like more of a lane than you need to be. The
yeah.
possibilities are endless.
Yeah, I
So
love that because again, you have such a. This is something that also we spoke about, like how our core talents as creatives, we are also made to think like because you were
this
in
is
fashion,
very yeah.
so okay, you can only do this, and even if we see it from a refreshing end, like if you see agency pitches and all of these things that you do, they're so similar, like, because there's a certain pattern, and whenever someone comes from
Correct.
another perspective, they break that, like, that that stereotype, and they
Yeah.
give people something new to look at. And that is all how
Yeah, so
creative
it
people
could
bring
actually
it.
be an advantage, which I didn't realize because I feel like I was
Yeah,
competing with all people who are from marketing and branding and like that perspective. And the fact that my project ended up winning that, I was like, okay, so I mean, like, there is no set rule. If you have an idea and a creative thing, you can do it in, like, you can figure out a way in which, and it was being judged by industry professionals with like 30 years
yeah,
of experience. So it's not like you
yeah,
can fool them with like doing faff around
right.
the cover page and they'll be like, oh, wow, I'm floored.
I love this because I think it's such a great example of how we just need to see our skills as our own skills, and then what we're putting into as only tools, and our tools can
Hmm.
always be switched and learned. And I mean, a lot of things, a lot of time people have this inhibition that they're doing one medium, or should they now do this, like, oh, you're doing this now, oh, NFTs are coming, should we do that, or like, how
Yeah,
will that, and it's like, I feel like we're all, as creative, I feel like I want to try as many things as possible, and then I keep filtering. Okay, I like this, I don't like this, and this works for me, this does not work for me.
hmm.
Like, this whole nerve of also trying like your creative ideas. I mean, I would have a thousand ideas every day. I never
Yeah,
knew about podcasting, but ever since I knew about it, I was like, this felt so natural to me, and it is
yeah.
a creative practice for me, because for me this feels like this is something that I need to feed through myself to be a better creator.
Sure. Like talk to different people and understand their
Yeah.
process. And
And for me, it's like digging, like, for me, it's also digging out stories and building those stories and putting that out there. And it's again something, and for me, human experience in women, I mean, creative and women, they are two core of everything I do. And
okay.
this is again another art form. Every day, we're always trying to discover something via art. I mean, you're trying to dig that Indian millennial, your own genre. I mean, we're all trying to discover and dig something in some or the other way.
Yeah.
It's just our tools get different over the time, and we evolve, and then we like something, we don't like something, or sometimes we just want to switch things up.
Yeah, definitely. That's for sure.
Perfect. If you were to meet younger Srishti today, what advice would you give her?
How young? This is very
Any
crucial.
young. Okay,
No,
maybe
like
let's
I would give a very
say
different
20.
advice at 16 and 20. Yeah.
You are very particular now. Let's say
Uh,
21-year old. I think that is
Just
like
graduate.
20-year old, 2021, tipping at the tip of the iceberg.
Okay, when I'm just still in like the last year of college, I know what advice. If I'm still in college, I know what advice I would have given her for sure. I would have told her, okay, it doesn't truly matter what your college fucking CGPA is. Just start networking with people and talking to people instead of like being in your bubble because that's the only thing eventually that matters. And college is never going to teach that to you until you go outside. Because I feel now when I retrospect in college, like we went to so many like fashion events as like 20-year-old, 21-year-old fashion weekends. But I don't know, we never networked or like met people and interacted. It was just something that was like whatever, like go see the fashion show and come back. Like I would have given advice okay, from the beginning, and now I understand the value of it. Like 10
Yeah.
years later, but and not just networking with the intent of like, oh, I'll get work out of it, but just interacting with different
Human
people
relations.
yeah, to you to understand, okay, this is where they come. Oh, maybe something interesting can work out later. Oh, this is so cool. I'll just go and introduce myself. Maybe I'll learn about something totally different that I didn't know about. So I feel like I missed out on like a large chunk of like those years where I wasn't in a shell. I was social, I had friends, but I was always in like a clique where I didn't find there was interest or thing in it. And I wish I could go back and do that because there were so many interesting people I could have networked with when I was in Delhi in those fashion circles. Yeah.
I love that because I think this is also again fundamentally something that we're always taught, like, that we felt like being just good at what you're doing was enough.
It's good.
I
Yeah,
think,
yeah, exactly.
yeah, you get this, if you come on the top, or like, even if you see it in school, people thought, I always thought when I was like, I was dyslexic majorly. Like, I could,
Okay.
even today for me, reading is like, I listen to audiobooks, and
Okay.
um I mean, for me, that's how I gain knowledge. And for a
Hmm.
very long time, I figured like I would, and imagine I did history honors, 3 years of
Wow.
terror. Like,
Yeah.
it was so hard for me. And I was like, I'm never going to succeed in life because this is how my grades look, or this is
Yeah.
what my teachers say, because I couldn't perform in the structure of whatever it was set. And
Yeah.
today I realized it didn't matter. I just needed to figure out, put myself in the right place, and if I wouldn't have put myself in the wrong places, I would never know what it feels to be right.
Exactly. Yeah. And but that's the thing, like even I feel like at least in design also, at least the experience that I had, while it is very focused on technical knowledge and skill set, which is extremely important for something like fashion because you need to be technically sound before you can do creative things. You need to know how to make that
Yeah.
outfit before you imagine that outfit. So I get that. But even with design school, I feel like it's so like structured and like oh you like so many assignments you're doing like from morning to night, there's not a single moment to breathe, where you just like come out of that whirlwind after 4 years and later when you look back you're like what the why the hell was I taking all these things so seriously? I could have just maintained like a very average CGPA and like actually gone and like made like crazy connections in the real world which would have serviced me way more.
And even with the world of social media, so many times I think like for me today, not coming from an art school is such a big advantage. And I think my biggest
Yeah.
disadvantage later on become that I came from a fashion school, because I felt like
Mm.
people, especially in the age of social media, people who didn't bound like were not driven by the rules, they were doing things like crazily, and they do something like, how internet works, like you do something off, something different, something
Yeah.
raw, and it picks up.
Yeah.
And I was like,
Yeah.
how can I still remember my biggest pet peeve, like when I was doing my fashion brand, I was like, oh, I'm going to give the best finishings ever. Like I was so obsessed
Mm.
because that's what I was taught. Nobody taught me you don't give up, you don't care about finishings. When you have to look at pricing, you have to look at margins, you have to look at all of these things.
Yeah, yeah, that was fun. Pricing was never discussed in college. Never knew pricing existed as a
Yeah,
concept. You have to think about
absolutely.
this also.
Like it was like quality without a variant of pricing and outcome and commerce
Yeah,
and success and anything. It was just quality. I mean,
yeah,
what you pay is what you get for.
yeah.
This was a fundamental. We were like, if I and also I think the fear of being a sellout. Like if I'm going to, I had this innate fear that because I came from a design school, I had this whole
Or that your
responsibility on my
garments have to look
shoulders.
a certain way. Yeah,
Yes,
it cannot. You
yes.
cannot send like yeah something which is not finished or
Yeah.
done to perfection. Yeah.
Exactly. So I started noticing this, especially at my own house. Like my mom was obsessed with fashion and clothes, and like
Hmm.
she would buy like, I still like, I have her biggest heirlooms and pieces with me. And I would, every time she would ask me, so I was this fundamental person. Every time she would ask me, like, oh, what's in fashion? And I'm like,
Hmm.
oh, this trend is in fashion. I'm like,
Huh.
I would get so irritated with the fact that I don't care what is in fashion, because I came
Huh.
from this, oh, it takes months to build this collection, and then
Yeah.
this is, I would turn upside these clothes and I would show her, like, oh, see how horrible
Oh,
this
it's
looks.
perfect on both sides. Wait,
Yeah.
alert
And
lost. Okay, sorry. I just got like a
I
notification
think
that
there's
lost connection, but I think yeah, okay.
we're still working. Yeah.
Yeah.
So, and I realized, and then she was like, and I figured out it doesn't really matter to her, because for her, everything that mattered at that point was, I mean, unless she wasn't really looking into investing like a Manish Malhotra or like something, like even then I don't think they would really turn their government
Turn the
upside down.
garment and like see that it is
Yeah,
like all finished with this all seems
yeah.
to
Oh,
perfect.
which
Hong Kong
theme
thing
it
has
that
happened.
is.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. And I would tell her, and I would tell her, oh, that is why it's more pricey, because oh,
Yeah.
French seam takes this much time and that much time and all of that. And I was like, what the idiot I was. What was I even doing? Because now that I realized it doesn't matter. I could do all those things later if I felt it was right. But the first
Yeah.
thing was to to have everything in balance.
Yeah. Correct.
Okay, my second last question. Shout out to an artist or a couple of artists who are who are you currently enjoying on social media.
Mm, uh, there is this artist called. I mean, her Instagram handle is called Delicious. Delicious. Yeah, but like it's
Okay.
delicious with DELHI. Delhi. She makes
Oh,
these beautiful. I mean, what is? I mean, I'll tell you her name also. This is not cool that I'm not telling her name.
I'm going to just note her and I'll link her on show
Anshita
notes.
Relan, okay. Yeah. She's making like these absolutely like beautiful like illustrations using like basically like against women's like faces and figures but with like this stunning like gold jewelry in this very like almost like tanjo type of art form and like beautiful lighting. Very nicely done. I really like her skill set. Then there is this okay art. I'll tell you. what is her name? See, that's the thing. I have so many people who I follow, but then
Yeah.
Okay, so there is this girl, and I think she's 19 years old. Okay, I just discovered her
Really?
profile. It's called Nashya Satyarthi, and her Instagram profile is Artsy Sushi Roll. Okay, now
Oh
she
my
is
God.
like because she is like I'm looking at her art like almost every day, and I'm like so she does like little bit of journaling, some like cartoon characters one day, then she'll do watercolor one day, then she's doing shit on Procreate, and she's so goddamn like raw skill is so good at the age of 19, where I'm just like I cannot even imagine the level once you maybe go to like college, or even if you don't go to college, if you continue this, what skill set you're going to reach when you're in your 30s? Because
Yeah.
such raw talent at the age of like 19, I'm like supremely impressed.
Okay. Do
And
you have any more?
I do have more, but I know okay, these I'm going to remember most of these after the conversation is over.
I have them. Perfect.
Yeah.
My last question. Okay. As a woman entrepreneur, creative, artist, designer, what's that one advice you want to give to people who are coming behind you?
Mm, I think that's only what I had like. It's probably going to be reiterating the same thing only that if you want to sustain this for like a decent amount of time, and it's not something that is like, oh, I'm just going to do this for a few years and then probably do something else, which is fair. But I feel like if you want to sustain this for like a legitimate amount of time, then you have to give yourself time to understand what is your aesthetic and sensibility, and that can only happen if you have done a million things and permutation combinations and probably failed and reached the point. Failed 5 times, got enough 5 times, done artworks which you were super embarrassed of, and like done all of that to realize that point that okay, this is what I truly enjoy and this is what I like, and only then I feel like it can sustain for a long time if you
Love
have
that.
that
I
in
think
place.
that's a very fair advice. Okay. Again, Srishti, I can't believe it's been way over, way over
Yeah.
than we should be recording, but I'm so grateful. I had so much fun knowing you, and honestly, it's been such a wonderful conversation. I really want to say a big
It
thank
has,
you
it
for
really
being.
has. Yeah, you were like a very like easygoing like speaker, like you make somebody very comfortable.
Thank you. I have one last thing I have to ask you before I let you go. People who are listening, especially because I have had very few Indian guests on the podcast, and I'm
Okay.
committing to bringing more creative women from India. And I really desperately want more and more people to know about your work. So I would love to give you the stage, and can you share where people can find you, support you, buy your work, and if there is any other upcoming project that you would want to share with us that we can also link on our website, please let us know.
So currently, the most active channel for my art is my Instagram profile, where I'm called Illustrator, and I have a website too, which is not like fully updated, but kind of gives
Oh,
you an
you have a
overview of
fabulous
everything that I've
website.
done. Yeah, but I haven't updated it in the past 6 8 months. There's some glitch that is
Okay.
happening, but it's kind of like yeah. I mean, you get an overview of the work that I've done till
Yeah.
now, which is good enough. So that's linked actually to my Instagram itself. So if you go to my bio, you can find that. And there are a few projects which we're in talks with right now, but like I mean, I don't think I'm at the liberty to discuss it until
Yeah.
like certain things are already fixed. But yeah, I mean, like that's about it. Yeah, but Instagram is the most active channel to reach out if you want to like talk to me or if you have any project queries. And in like my merch also, all the information is there, like on my Insta stories and there. So if you just DM me, in all probability, I will get back to you in like 4 5 days. Yeah.
Yeah, be patient, one man army.
Yeah, exactly, exactly.
Perfect. Thank you so much. Okay, and everyone who's listening, I would definitely recommend go check out her work. I'm so grateful to have Srishti, who's been such a game changer for Indian women illustrators, creatives, and I'm definitely cheering for you, and I am so excited to see what you do further, and I'll bring you back again with every new milestone that you have, not
Yeah,
just
yeah,
that
done.
we've had you
Yeah,
here,
sure.
but again I want to say a big thank you for being here. Thank you so much. I really appreciate your
Thank
time.
you. All right,
Thank you.
bye.
Thank you so much for listening to this episode. You can find all the details and links mentioned in the show notes of this episode available on www.arts2heartsproject.com. And if you like this episode, please don't forget to tag us in your stories and leave us a review here on iTunes or any of your favorite platforms. It really helps us to keep the show going. Thank you so much and sending you lots of love, and I can't wait to be back here soon again. Bye.